And suddenly, Claire appeared in Connor's life. She accidentally ended up in their office for business matters. Claire worked in economics at a partner firm, and there were questions related to accounting that required her to sort things out there. Connor crossed paths with her at the entrance to the office. He was hurrying to the parking lot when he was called in by management. And there she was, Claire. She was far from the standards typical for Connor. Charming but lacking a model-like appearance, petite, with a short haircut, serious gray eyes, freckles on her slightly upturned nose, delicate lips somewhat resembling an elf from some tale. Without understanding the reason for his actions, Connor suddenly stopped, staring at the visitor. Claire absent-mindedly glanced at him and quickly moved on, tightly gripping the folder of documents in her hands. Despite her hurry, Connor instinctively followed her. On the third floor, the girl with a short haircut slowed down and looked around uncertainly. After all, their office was famous for its convoluted maze of stairs and corridors, which always confused newcomers. "Are you looking for something?" Connor asked with a smile, trying to establish contact with the mysterious visitor. "Yes, I'm a bit lost. I need to go to the accounting department," the attractive stranger replied with a smile. "It would be great if you could show me." Connor deliberately chose the longest route, allowing himself to have a conversation with her. As they walked, they managed to get to know each other a little. Claire communicated so easily and naturally, as if she had known Connor for many years, and he found that very appealing. He really didn't want to part ways with Claire when the door to the accounting department, which they were heading towards, finally appeared on the horizon. "Well, here we are," Connor said with slight disappointment. "Honestly, I don't want you to go in there." "Why are there such serious employees?" Claire joked. "I need to leave urgently now, and when I return, you won't be here anymore. I don't want to say goodbye to you right now and not see you again, you know." "I understand," Claire nodded, adding, "I feel the same way." Claire's words made Connor's heart beat stronger, as if a warm wave washed over him. Inside, it became bright and joyful. He felt that he liked her, and it was genuine happiness. Suddenly, he wanted to hug her and stroll through the corridors together, but perhaps it was too early for such strong gestures. "That's nice to hear," Connor replied reservedly, but his eyes, shining with joy, conveyed all his happiness to Claire. Connor asked for Claire's phone number, and she handed him her mobile. He quickly saved his number in her phone and made a test call. "Well, now we're in touch, and I'll definitely call." "Wait for it," Connor smiled. "Definitely," Claire replied, and he dialed her number. Of course, he called on the same day, immediately upon returning from management, just to make sure the number was working. There were still a few hours left until the end of the workday. Claire finished a little later than Connor. They agreed that he would pick her up after work. And he did. Arriving a bit earlier than agreed, Connor sat in the car for a while, observing the exit of the office building attentively. People came out one by one and in groups, but Claire was not among them. Finally, she appeared. Connor instantly jumped out of the car and hurried towards her. Initially, they spent some time in a cafe, getting to know each other, sharing more significant moments from their lives. Claire lived with her mother in a small apartment in a newly built area. She successfully completed the economics faculty at the local university. Connor also studied there, and had he been more actively attending classes, they might have met earlier. However, at that time, he was only interested in girls with model-like appearances, until recently. Connor couldn't quite understand what had struck him about Claire's appearance. She didn't fit his usual preferences at all. But in her company, he felt an incredible comfort and ease. He and Claire were completely different. Connor was self-assured, preferred noisy gatherings, and honestly expressed his opinions. Although this sometimes offended others, he was not inclined to analyze the feelings of others and was straightforward. Claire, on the other hand, was delicate and afraid of causing pain to others. She sensitively reacted to changes in people's moods, was calm, serious, hardworking, and exceptionally responsible. Although somewhat shy, she aimed to achieve her goals and was willing to do a lot for that. Connor and Claire seemed like two halves complementing each other, drawn so strongly to one another that they didn't want to part. They walked until late at night, just holding hands, or sat embraced in the car. Claire enjoyed visiting museums, exhibitions, and leisurely walks, during which they could talk about heartfelt topics, as well as trips out of town to appreciate nature. Connor introduced her to an entirely new world, taking her to rock concerts and inviting her to his noisy and fun gatherings. All of this was interesting and exciting for Claire. Connor knew for sure that she wasn't pretending or doing things only for him. They were sincere with each other from the very beginning, and Claire wouldn't hide her feelings. Besides, he saw admiration in her eyes. He felt happy next to her and thanked fate for their encounter. The guy got to know Claire's mother, who turned out to be a pleasant woman, around his parents' age. She brewed fragrant tea from garden herbs and baked delicious pies. Claire always complained about her poor cooking skills, but Connor was willing to overlook her lack of skill and disinterest in housekeeping. Her shyness only evoked admiration from him. Connor didn't know how to propose that Claire move in with him. Since Hannah, he hadn't invited anyone over. Although it would have been more logical to propose to Claire. They had been dating for almost a year, both at an appropriate age for marriage, but Connor still had doubts. Connor immersed himself in thoughts about the serious step that required enormous caution from him. Many things caused his anxiety. From childhood, his parents advised him not to rush into marriage. "You're an attractive, successful guy, a groom that anyone would envy," his mother insisted. "Girls will surround you, seeking to marry for their advantage. They marry a wealthy guy first and then divorce, demanding money and property by law. How many of such stories have I heard? Be cautious." Connor didn't entertain the thought that Claire was deliberately hiding something. But the idea of marriage rooted in his mind as a serious and considered decision, not to be rushed. He didn't want to limit his options. At the moment, everything was going perfectly, but who knows what might happen in the future. Strong feelings for Claire overwhelmed Connor, and he realized their strength. He had never felt anything like it before. However, Hannah's situation made him cautious. Marriage was a responsibility, including the possibility of having children, to which Connor was not prepared. He didn't yearn for such early obligations. He wanted to savor his freedom, explore life, and discover new things without being tied down with diapers and baby rompers. He had friends who already had families, and he saw how they dealt with changes in relationships after having children. He observed how their time was consumed by caring for the little ones, how household problems and duties arose, and how personal freedom gradually disappeared. Connor didn't want his life to revolve solely around children, because it seemed like a loss of his own individuality. He dreamed of a life for himself, not wanting to devote all his time to taking care of a baby. Connor saw himself as a father in the distant future, but not in the next 5 to 7 years. Contrary to this, he contemplated how to suggest Claire move in with him, avoiding an official wedding ceremony. But to his surprise, she was the one who began discussing the possibility of living together, without touching on the topic of marriage. Claire admitted that she wanted to fall asleep and wake up in his embrace, and she also expressed convenience in commuting to work from his place. These words brought relief to Connor, and finally, he found a solution to the issue that had been tormenting him for so long. He and Claire started living together, creating a unified family, only temporarily parting for work. Their first steps were filled with adaptation. Claire wasn't very experienced in household chores, but it was understandable given that she had always lived with her mother. Connor taught her many things: cooking and quick room tidying. It was fun and endearing, and these activities only strengthened their relationship. Claire proved to be a talented student, quickly surpassing her teacher and enjoying preparing unique dishes. "Maybe you should consider changing your profession," Connor joked, tasting Claire's latest gastronomic creation. "Such skills shouldn't be hidden from the public." "Maybe I will, it's almost serious," Claire replied. "But not now. I'll wait until I have some free time, and then I'll open my own little restaurant. That would be great." Over time, Claire and Connor's friends became acquainted and formed a close-knit group. They enjoyed spending time together. Walks in the forest, by the river, hiking trips, and occasionally playing board games. For Connor, it was surprising and engaging. He never imagined that board games could be so interesting, considering them an activity for children. Watching the particular look from Claire's friend, Ruby, Connor felt a certain awkwardness. Is that your friend Ruby? He dared to ask Claire, sensing some tension. She seems okay with you. Yes, everything's fine, Claire smiled. It's just that you look remarkably like a guy Ruby was once madly in love with. But they had such an unfortunate story. Ruby was deeply into him, but he played with her, seeing other girls. He was with her but didn't want a serious relationship. Ruby still loved him and suffered. Yes, it was a real drama, but that was back in school. We were so young then, just graduated. Youth, foolishness. At that age, you can forgive a lot, recalled Connor. Ruby told me a lot about him. And recently confessed that you look strikingly similar to him, like two peas in a pod. Such a strange coincidence. How did that story end? Claire asked. Nothing special. The guy moved to another city and found happiness with someone else. Ruby suffered, searched for him on social media. But then it seems she let go. Started paying attention to other guys. Seems like she let go of the past. But then you appeared, and memories of her first unhappy love came back. And I look like him, Connor exclaimed. By the way, he was a real heartthrob according to Ruby. But the similarity between you is only physical. You're kind, sensitive, a profound person, and he. Selfish, superficial, soulless. How Ruby didn't notice that, I don't understand. Connor, you're not any better than the person Ruby recalls. He didn't value feelings and manipulated women, Claire said thoughtfully. Claire, you didn't know me back then. I wasn't the best person then. But people change over time, Connor replied, trying to explain his point of view. Shaking his head to rid himself of unpleasant thoughts, they lived closely together, spending time with each other, meeting friends, going shopping. In their relationship, they always supported and cared for each other. However, despite this, Connor felt a sense of freedom. Claire was comfortable with his meetings with friends, just as he accepted her meetings with her friends. He was confident that Claire wouldn't betray him. Several years passed. Claire dreamed of children, aspiring to become a mother, while Connor didn't yet feel ready for parenthood. They openly discussed this topic. Before we become parents, I have many other goals, he shared. Both in my career and personal life. I want to travel, develop my business. It will be problematic with children. Too bad, sighed Claire. I've long dreamt about our children. But if you're not ready, I'll wait. It's important to me that our future child brings joy to both of us. I'm not ready to agree to anything else. Connor was grateful that Claire understood and accepted his decision. He was prepared for a lot but not for parenthood, at least not at this moment. However, fate intervened in their lives. Claire came once with news that shook their relaxed reality. Connor, we need to have a serious conversation, something happened, she said, a slight worry evident in her voice. Claire looked lost and pale. What happened? You look frightened, raced through Connor's mind. I don't know how to tell you this, Claire sighed. It's difficult for me to discuss this, especially considering your stance on this matter. But I'm pregnant. What? Connor was shocked. It was like a sudden blow that stunned him, causing panic. I don't understand how this happened. We used protection, but sometimes that's how it goes. I've already been to the doctor, and he said that no method guarantees 100% certainty, Claire explained. You know I'm not ready to become a father, Connor said softly, his gaze fixed on hers. I've just started building my business. I have many unfulfilled plans. Now is not the time for a child. Do you at least understand what you're suggesting to me? Claire's voice held determination. This isn't easy for me either. I understand you. But sometimes it happens. Medicine is advanced now, my term is still short. Everything will be quick and painless, without any significant consequences, Connor persuaded. Connor realized that his words were incredibly heavy, but right now, he couldn't express his feelings differently. It was simply impossible. And he had the right to his opinion on this matter. After all, a child would completely change his life and overturn the usual order of things. Claire should consider his point of view. But she looked at him as if he were a complete stranger. In her eyes, there was pain, disappointment, and distrust. You scare me, Claire whispered. You scare me a lot. You don't know how much. Suddenly, Connor remembered his mother's words, her warning about cunning women who maneuver themselves to coerce wealthy men into marrying them, then use it to their advantage. You just want me to marry you, burst out from Connor. You're just like all the rest. And here I thought. Claire didn't say another word. She turned and left the apartment, taking only the keys to her car from the mirror. Connor immediately realized he had said something terrible. Of course, Claire wasn't like that. He offended her needlessly. On the other hand, Claire should have understood that there wouldn't be any child. Connor was sure he wasn't going to be a father. He had told her that many times. But maybe she was just pretending to agree. Rushing out onto the balcony to call Claire back, he hoped they could discuss everything and come to an agreement. They both knew they shouldn't rush things. He intended to apologize for his harsh words. After all, he truly loved Claire very much. She was the closest person to him, no matter what. But Claire didn't even look back at his hurried words. Claire, deeply hurt, abruptly got behind the wheel of her car, slammed the door loudly, sparks in her eyes, and sped off in an unknown direction. It's okay, Connor said to himself, trying to calm himself down. Everything will settle, you're always rational. You'll come back. You know you can't manage without me. I'm sure you love me as much as I love you. We're destined to be together, and that won't change. To relieve the tension, Connor fetched a bottle of brandy from the bar and corked it. He needed a momentary distraction from the worry. Alcohol helped him escape intrusive thoughts. At that moment, the world seemed simpler and problems more manageable. Crafting a conciliatory message in his mind, apologizing for his harsh words, expressing his love, and calling for a serious conversation, Connor was even willing to discuss a future with a child. If it was essential for Claire, he was ready to sacrifice. After all, he understood that he probably wouldn't find anyone closer to his heart than her. Without her, he simply couldn't imagine his life. He particularly missed her presence at that moment. Yes, things didn't go as planned, and it frightened Connor. The news had thrown him off balance, but he would think through everything in detail. Everything would be all right with Claire, as long as she returned and forgave him for his harsh words. Throughout that agonizing evening, he repeatedly tried to call Claire, but she didn't answer. Maybe she was even crying, and that thought pierced Connor's heart. He puzzled over his new role becoming the source of pain for the one he loved. He desired to bring joy, to see a smile on her face, to make her happy. But it turned out differently. He became the cause of her sorrow. All evening, he ran through various scenarios in his mind, accepted Claire's decision, understood her perspective. Connor was willing to do anything just to bring a smile back to her face, even if it meant paying a high price. When Claire drove off in an unknown direction in her car, Connor suddenly realized how much he needed her, that his life was now incomplete without her. He waited for her to calm down and respond to his call, but there was no response. It was the first time she had been upset with him. Connor got distracted, immersing himself in watching some TV show while scrolling through the news feed on his phone. Suddenly, information about an accident that had occurred recently on the highway appeared before his eyes. Among the photos from the scene, his gaze snagged on Claire's damaged car, the very car he had given her a year ago when she had just got her driver's license. Claire felt a strong sense of embarrassment. Connor had given her an expensive car, but he had been unwavering in his decision. She had to agree, even though she had always cherished that Swallow, as she called the car, often taking it for a wash, giving it more attention than necessary. Connor still harbored hope for a mistake. There could have been many white cars of the same brand in the city. But the suspension shaped like a ballerina cat on the shattered windshield made him pause. He had bought that suspension in Finland, where he had recently been sent for work, but the details were limited. Apparently, the driver lost control and crashed into the road barrier at high speed. But Claire had always been cautious. Connor even smirked, recalling her slow movements behind the wheel. He doubted she would speed on the highway. It wasn't her nature. But Claire, when she ran away from him yesterday, her soul was deeply shaken. Why hadn't he thought to hold her back, grab her hand, hug her tighter, not letting her go even for a step? The driver was taken to the regional hospital in critical condition. Reading this, Connor saw a photo of severe damage. But he's still alive, Connor thought with a shudder. A taxi had already been ordered to take him to the hospital. The night was so dark and heavy. The sleepy and embarrassed receptionist asked Connor his relationship to the injured person. Upon hearing that he was her partner, the nurse regretfully stated that she was not authorized to disclose any information about the patient. If only you were married, Connor bitterly smiled. He had no intention of leaving the hospital. He paced back and forth, trying to peer through the windows until a security guard ushered him away. But he didn't give up. He decided to return to the clinic lobby, persistently intending to learn anything about Claire's condition. There he encountered her mother. They rushed towards each other, embracing tightly. The woman looked lost and frightened, her eyes brimming with tears, and it was no wonder. She knew nothing about her daughter's quarrel with Connor, not even suspecting it. All because of him. He felt guilty about what had happened. "How's Claire?" "I'm not getting any updates on her condition. She's in the ICU after the surgery. Her condition is extremely critical," the doctor said. Connor nodded silently, consumed by thoughts of Claire and her fight for life. Yes, of course, they couldn't save the baby. Doctors are doing everything they can. You would have been happy if this accident hadn't happened. You would have been expecting a baby. "I would have been happy for you," Claire's mother uttered. Connor nodded in sync with Claire's mother's words, tears streaming down his cheeks unnoticed. Claire's mother signed some papers, after which he was allowed into the ICU to be with Claire. But it was only for a moment. He sat by her side as if she were wrapped in wires, holding her hand, apologizing, begging her to come back, promising that as soon as she recovered, they would marry immediately and start planning a future with children.